This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 28. It's part 2 of a 2-part series. Previously, we talked about what to do before a conference to make sure it's a great event. This one talks about what to do during and after a conference to make sure it works for you. That's next on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money. Work less and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
David, what are you reading right now?
I'm not reading anything right now. I'm writing right now. But when I was at the gym this morning, I did start a new audiobook.
Ooh, any good?
Yeah, it's excellent, actually. It's an autobiography of Paul Stanley. Do you know who that is?
Not at all.
A lot of people wouldn't know that name. You would know him if you saw him. He's the lead singer of a band called Kiss.
I'd know him if I saw him, unless he was wearing a black and white face.
He's got a black and white face, got a star around his eye. That's Paul Stanley. And it's surprisingly, I'm not a huge Kiss fan, but I like autobiographies. I like to read about successful people, or in this case, listen to them tell their story. And it's amazing, like what this guy has been through and what those guys have done to stay on top and to be successful. Very hard market music, grew up in New York. He was born with only one ear.
Oh.
And he's a musician. That says something about what he's been through.
Does he still only have one ear?
Yeah, I think
Or did they graft some ear on his head? I have no idea.
Well, yeah, I think they fixed that.
They fixed it, okay.
I mean, it doesn't work. He's deaf on that side, but I think they can give him a prosthetic ear.
Interesting. So
It doesn't matter. He's got long hair. You'd never see it anyway. But
well, I have long hair. You see my ears.
It's a fantastic story, though. It's about a guy that has really seen it all when it comes to the entertainment business and the ups and downs of that and the ups and downs of a career. So anybody, even if you're like me, you're not necessarily a Kiss fan or even a music fan. It's somebody who's been successful in business and as a celebrity. A lot of the same things people that listen to Red Podcast are looking for: bloggers, writers, entertainers, musicians.
Anyone who has a message that they're trying to get out to the masses. That's what we're really talking about.
So this book, it's called Face the Music. You can actually get it free at Audible with a trial if you go to receivethebook.com, and you can check that out. But yeah, I'm pretty much in writing mode. Right now I'm listening to that. And
do you ever read books or do you just listen to them?
I listen to books a lot because I'm in the gym a lot, working out. That's a great way to use that time. I listen to books if I'm ever driving. I'm also listening to War of Art by Stephen Pressfield in the car right now, actually.
I haven't done that one. Of course, Turning Pro is fantastic.
Turning Pro is excellent. He talks about that in the War of Art. So I do that. I read on a Kindle or else an iPad. And speaking of Kindles, we've been giving away a lot of Kindles on the 30 days of Red Hot giveaways. And we're giving away some stuff today, Laurel, but not a Kindle. We're giving away an Amazon TV today.
Amazon TVs are hot now.
They are very hot. We've got some other good stuff. I've got a book here that I think is going to be really good for the topic that we're talking about. We're talking about networking at music conferences again, and is a conference worth it? How to make the most of a conference. I've got a book called New Business Networking by Dave Delaney that we're going to be giving away as well.
Dave is awesome, and we talked more about that book in another episode. Dave knows his networking stuff, so that's a perfect giveaway for today.
It's a perfect match. We're talking about how to make the most of a conference. We're going to talk about what to do during and after the conference, and this is brought to you by Podcast Movement, which is a brand new conference. It's coming up in Dallas, August 16th and 17th. It's all about podcasting, so if you're listening, you've got a podcast, you want to have a podcast, you should check this out. Podcast Movement, they're at podcastmovement.com. We had an episode earlier. It's at redpodcast.com/27. That's what to do before the conference starts, and there's a lot. That was an entire episode of what to do before a conference, researching and evaluating and connecting with people beforehand. We're talking about during the conference and how to follow up with people afterwards and how to get the most of everything afterwards. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, and if you're going to Podcast Movement in August, you can apply all of what we're talking about on the last episode and this episode to that conference. That's going to be a great opportunity for you to actually use these tips in action.
Yeah. This is like Boy Scout knot tying. It's fun to learn them, but even more fun to use them. So when you do this, we should talk about our background really, really quickly, Laurel. I used to own the second largest music business conference in the country. Had thousands of people during the day, tens of thousands at night. We would showcase as many as 400 acts every conference. So I've run several conferences, workshops, boot camps, and been to probably 50 or 60 myself. You've been to several. We talked on the last episode about magic when you owned a retail clothing store, a lot of trade shows.
Yeah, again, when I was doing my retail store, when I was running that, I went to a lot of the different trade shows. And now that I have more of an online coaching business, I'm doing more of the conference type shows. So, but you can use the same set of skills and the same plan to do both types.
So I've got a buddy of mine from the music industry. His name is Derek Sivers. Do you know Derek?
I know of him. I have never met him.
A lot of people know him because he does TED Talks. He's a guy, shaved head, talks on TED a lot. But he owned a company called CD Baby, and he was a musician before that. But I've known him a long time. And one of the things that always amazed me about Derek, he's a lot like me. He's a musician, and he's an introvert. But he was always the first guy there. He was the last person to leave. And that's the first tip for during the event. You got to show up early and leave late if you're going to get the most out of it. You've only got a limited window of opportunity. I see a lot of people sleep in. I see people take off. The last conference we went to at New Media Expo, it was in Las Vegas. I knew a guy one time, this is crazy, took him out to Las Vegas. He got on the blackjack table, and he didn't leave for 24 hours.
And he was supposed to go to the conference with you?
Supposed to be at the conference. That happens a lot in Las Vegas. And it was just a really sad scene. Not only was he missing the conference, but he also lost a lot of money that 24-hour period.
I believe that. Well, it's not just show up early and leave late. What I like to do at conferences is find out what people are doing. Like if there's a smaller group of people getting together and then say they're having breakfast, I like to go join them for breakfast, go to the conference, and then if people are getting together for dinner, go do that. So that way you get your conference time, but you also get a more intimate setting with fewer people where you can make these intimate connections.
Yeah, I think it's about making the most of your time. Sometimes we'll show up at a conference early, like a day early, or leave a day late. We did that with New Media Expo because a lot of the networking, a lot of the connections that happen are happening beforehand or afterwards. People are busy during the event. You're going to have more of an opportunity to meet with people before and after a lot of times, so it can be worth the extra hotel room or the extra food or whatever your expenses are for staying a couple of extra days. And I will say this, Laurel, I think it's very important. I liked what you said about connecting with people for dinner. Being open. Sometimes it can be very exhausting to be in an event, especially if you don't know what you're getting into. And sometimes maybe you don't necessarily like everybody in the group. Maybe one guy was kind of a jerk. But I think being open, you never know what's going to happen. And there's a lot of good that can happen when you say yes to opportunity.
And not to be a pessimist, but it's easier said than done. I mean, it's something that I work on at every conference that I go to, is being open to what's going on. And because it would be so much easier for me as an introvert to go back to my hotel room and turn on the TV and just chill out and take a break. Like that is way easier. But I try to be open to, okay, it's only 3 days. I want to be open to the experiences and open to the people and open to the content. But I just want to point out that it's a little easier said than done. It's something you might have to work on.
It's definitely easier said than done because there's always that one guy that's trying to get you to buy his stuff or his coaching or whatever. And he's pitching everybody. He's in like a multi-level marketing organization or something, just driving you crazy, and he'll be in the group because he just attaches on. You think, I really need a little bit of quiet. Is anything good going to come of this? A lot of times, yes. It just takes one really good connection to make a conference worthwhile. So stick it out, be open, say yes, and see what happens.
And I say walk up to people and talk to them. Don't expect people to come and introduce themselves to you. You have to take the lead on this. I mean, everybody's going through their own stuff, and there are a lot of shy people there, a lot of people who really don't know how to approach other people. So you have to take the initiative and develop the confidence that it takes to go up and introduce yourself to people. That's the only way you're going to be able to make these connections.
Especially at a new media conference, it's strange to think about people that would be into podcasting, for example, or blogging, or speaking, public speaking. But those are some of the shyest people that I know. It's really weird to walk up to people and they're like, they're so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
it's
certainly not
intimidating.
and they're not going to approach you if they're that nervous. So if you can walk up to them, here's another thing, listen. When you're having a conversation, shut up and listen, because you can learn a lot of great things. A lot of guys are, like I mentioned earlier, the multi-level marketing person that's trying to sell you on something, sell you his coaching, sell you his multi-level marketing product. Don't do that. Shut up and listen, and you'd be amazed at what you could find out. Don't make assumptions.
You're going to have to take your own advice, David. You're a big talker.
Yeah, that's why I got a podcast. But that's part of it, especially if you've got an interview show. It's a good skill that you should learn how to do is listen, because that is how you control the interview. That's how you can work with what is being given. You miss a lot of stuff when you don't listen. But it is an acquired skill, certainly, and it's something that I'm definitely working on, as are most people.
Absolutely. And what I always think of is the person who is getting the most enjoyment in a conversation is the person who's talking the most. And so when I talk to somebody, I want that person to be getting the most enjoyment out of the conversation. So I keep asking them questions and listening to their answer and continuing to be curious about them so that they keep talking and they walk away with a good experience from me. So just think about, if you're dominating the conversation, that person isn't getting as much enjoyment as you. If you don't believe me, go on a date with somebody who talks the entire time. That person had a fabulous time, and you are never going to go on a second date with them. So just keep that in mind.
Speaking of listening, asking questions during panels is a great way to get the information that you need. We talked about it earlier on the last episode, which is at redpodcast.com/27. And that's how to prepare for a panel, coming in ahead of time with the questions you need answered. But by asking questions, especially early in the event, you fly your flag, you let people know where you are, you can introduce yourself, and not only will you get your questions answered, but you'll also have people come up to you afterwards and say, hey, I found this solution. Or they'll say, hey, I'm in a similar situation. So it's a great way to meet people and knock out two birds with one stone.
And you said it, David, introduce yourself when you ask a question. Go up there, if there's a microphone or something like that, or if you stand up, say, my name is so-and-so, my podcast, if you're going to podcast movement, my podcast is fill in the blank, and then ask your question. And a lot of times I'll do something where I ask questions to people on a panel who I know, and they'll give me a plug as well. And that's just something that kind of reiterates what you're doing and makes you stand out from the crowd when the person on the panel is like, oh, that's Laurel. She runs the Go Fire Yourself podcast. You should check it out. So another little tip there.
With that said, have a good question. Think about what you're saying. We've all seen those people, like the multi-level marketing guy, that want to stand up in every single panel, and he's not really asking a question. He's basically just plugging himself. And this happens on podcasts all the time. Have you ever heard the phone-in shows, or the ones where people will leave a voice message, Laurel? And they'll say, hi, my name is John Smith, and I'm from multilevelmarketingproducts.com.net.biz. We sell a full line of multi-level marketing products, and I really enjoy your podcast, and here's my question. It takes them like 30 seconds to get to the question. Don't be that guy.
You don't like those multi-level guys, do you?
Well, those are just a great example to use, because those are the guys that are always pitching. And that's something that is actually a pretty good skill, to be able to walk up to people and be able to take rejection like that. But at the same time, you have to read your audience, and when people aren't responding to it, you can't just talk louder and move closer.
Yeah, they've actually, multi-level people actually have great skills. I was approached by one the other day and